kids, I'm about to read to you one of my favorite books, and I have an assignment for you after this book. This book is called The Big Orange Splot, and it is by Daniel Pinkwobber. And when you're done with this book, my assignment for you is going to be to create your favorite kind of house. Here we go. Mr. Plumbeam lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way, and so did everybody else on Mr. Plumbeam's street. Plumbean Street. This is a neat street, they would say. And then one day, a bright seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint, no one knows why, and he dropped the can, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbean's house. Ooh, too bad, everybody said. Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange splot for a long time, and then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange splot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbean, we wish you would get around to painting your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbean. He got some blue paint and some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler, and when the paint was gone, the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange splot was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint, and in the morning, all the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange splot. There were little orange splots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. The people said, Plumbean has popped his cork, flipped his lid, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper, and they went away muttering. That day Mr. Plumbean bought carpenter's tools, and that night he built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day the people said, Plumbean has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, and slipped his hawser. They decided they would pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani, and in the morning he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in a hammock between two palm trees. They saw an alligator lying in the grass, and Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. Plumbean has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbean, what have you done to your house? The people shouted. My house is me and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams, Mr. Plumbean said. The people went away, They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbean to go and have a talk with him. Tell him we all liked it here before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours so we can have a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Early the next morning, the man went out to get a lumber and rope and nails and paint, and when the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbean. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams," said the man who had always loved ships. "He's just like Mr. Plumbean," the people said. "He's got bees in his bonnet and bats in his belfry and knots in his noodle." And then one by one they went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbean's house the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house or her own house to fit his or her own dreams. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbean and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "Oh, this is not a neat street." And then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all of our dreams." And that's the end of the story. So your assignment is, please draw a picture of a house, or it could look like a boat or anything, of what your dream house would be like. Don't forget to include animals. If you have animals in your dream house, don't forget to include fun things like, I don't know, slides and hot air balloons and water features and anything, and make sure you color it, and then I would love to see that. I hope you have fun drawing your own house of your own dreams. Bye for now.